You are listening to Two Heels and a Face Wrestling Podcast, a podcast where we believe wrestling is a buffet and there's something there for everyone. Make sure you're following us on all social media such as Twitter, Instagram, Facebook under Two Heels and a Face. That's number 2 Heels and a Face. Make sure you check out our website, twoheelsandaface.com.
Era, Two Heels and a Face.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Two Heels and a Face Wrestling Podcast. On today's episode, we are actually going to get into, funny enough, some journalistic stuff today. It is Charlie just solo. Chris could not make today's episode. He's got family stuff going on. And it's ironic today because in the past, we have been called journalists, which is funny to think about because we are not that. Not that there's anything wrong with them. Obviously, we'll get into a little bit of that today because we have one on the show. But we're strictly editorial. And people have said, why didn't you talk about this? Why didn't you talk about that? That's not our job. That is not our job. We like to have fun, lighthearted interviews. I think today will be a little bit more diving into the journalistic side of wrestling. He's someone who's been on Potting with Ego. That's Robert Anthony's podcast too. That's if you listen to this Two Heels and a Face, you understand Chris and I listen to that podcast. We reference that podcast a lot. And I believe this gentleman is local to Chicago as well. He's been around the block and starting his own venture, his own site. He's got tons of entrepreneurial spirit, which I think Chris being an entrepreneur, myself being a freelancer at one point, we respect that kind of gusto, that kind of drive and things like that. So today it's just solo with me. Sorry for you, those listeners who like Chris a lot. He will be back, I'm sure, on the next show. And I think we can bring in our guest. There's Mr. Nick Hausman of House of Wrestling. Nick, welcome to the stream. How's it going?
I'm great, Charlie. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Two Heels and a Face. Unsure if you're familiar with us, but we believe wrestling is a buffet. That's kind of our shtick, I guess. But I think you're a really good guest because we like to shine light on like different corners, I think, of this Chicago, and you're Chicago based. Like
I am.
Yeah. On different corners and sections. I mean, we've had anything on from referees to ring announcers to independent wrestlers that wrestle at freelance. I know you have some history with that company too. But yeah, local to Chicago, right? Are you born and raised here?
I'm not. Well, I am 38, okay. So I've
Okay.
lived in Chicago 20 years now. I moved here to go to school at Loyola Chicago, but I initially grew up in a town called The Woodlands, Texas.
Oh, cool. Okay, so you're pretty much a Chicagoan though. You would consider yourself that, correct?
Yeah, I have I have my redneck past, and I do occasionally. I mean, there's parts of me that still very much I feel like are too Texas for Chicago, but by and large, I consider myself a Chicagoan at this point. Yes.
Loyola, that's the campus. Is that uptown where that is? It's
close to uptown. It's in Rogers Park, so it's on the north side.
Cool.
Yeah.
Ironically, my wife works there now. She does she's an admin assistant for some kind of a sustainability program, I believe.
All right, rock and roll. So she works for Loyola now?
She currently works for Loyola. I mean, I don't think anyone. I don't know if I'm doxing her in any way. I don't think I am, but yeah, I don't think anyone will care.
You don't want that heat at home. You don't want to accidentally dox your wife and have that.
People know her first name, but now yes, she can be seen stomping around that campus. But it's I think school's out now. But yeah, how was your time there?
Oh boy, I'm a dropout, so I don't want to I don't want to sit here and say I almost made it. I just kind of flamed out there like back half of my junior year. Had a lot of personal stuff going on, and I didn't really move to the city to go to Loyola. I moved to the city to go learn how to do improv comedy on the streets. And so by the end of my junior year, I was pretty much a full-time comedian at that point. And I was doing a lot of cocaine, and I was drinking a lot, and I was just I was a wild child, man. I was crazy. And so, I mean, how was my time at Loyola? A complete blur where I tried my best I went to a lot of parties around campus. I had a great roommate named Jeff. We threw some kick-ass parties. He was a weed dealer. It was great for me.
There you
It was
go.
an awesome time.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, it's great. It's great that you had a lot of fun.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the good part. Obviously, there's some extracurricular activities, and there's some are fine. I think mostly is done responsibly. So
Yes.
that's all. That's all I'll say there. But no, it's interesting to see. I think where you ended up. I know you talked a lot about this on Potting with Ego, but the transition from the improv stuff to now then wrestling,
right,
and things like that. So it's really cool. But about wrestling, I wanted to get to, this is a kind of a general question we usually ask on the podcast. So, and apologies for the vagueness here, but like, what is it about wrestling that you do enjoy? What are the aspects? Like, what is it that draws you to this sport or this sports entertainment? So,
I'm a theater nerd, first of all. So when I was in school, technically I was there on a theater scholarship. I was supposed to go to North Carolina for school for the performing arts, or I was accepted and I passed and whatever. So I do love I love the art of theater, and I like form. I'm a big form nerd, and I love structure and storytelling.
There you go.
And pro wrestling is obviously it's like Shakespeare, it's like theater. There's all kinds of different parallels you could draw, but it's also like soap opera. And if you watch soap opera, and like as a child of Texas, my mom watched soap operas all the time. They were always on in the background. Like, you're just you're making content by the pound over when you're making soap operas, right? And it's just like, we got to grab their attention right now. We don't have time to really think. They're a double agent, spy, murderer, pedophile, whatever crazy, whatever insane, we got to do something to get their attention. Just craziness.
Yeah.
I like that energy with pro wrestling too, where it's like anything can happen, because it's not like you're sitting down and you're trying to write this perfect 3-act play. You're just trying to keep up. You're just trying to do the best you can in like this warlike theater environment. And I love seeing what comes out of that. I love watching how people try to figure out what to do. I think the whole thing is just cool. It's an interesting thing to look at.
Yeah, no, that's a great. My wife always says when she's explaining, because I kind of had this lull of wrestling where I liked it a lot growing up, and then I got away from it. And then once honestly, when Sting debuted at Survivor Series, and I realized there was a network of all the stuff that we watched growing up.
Yeah,
I have got into it. That was like 2016, and then I've discovered independence in 2017. That's when I met Chris, and that's when this podcast started. And kind of the rest is history of whatever we want to watch. So, I want to know about some of like your fondest memories growing up and like of watching wrestling. Who were the people that you were first drawn to in this crazy like theatrical spectacle?
Well, I'm very much a child of that time where I started watching, I remember like the first episodes of Monday Night Raw. And I was watching WCW on Saturday nights. And so I remember like the pre-Monday Night War stuff. And like when I got into it, I really loved like big characters. I was like, all about the Dungeon of Doom and, the Duke the Dumpster Drosy and like the just like most hokey stuff you could imagine. But then when the Monday Night Wars started kicking off, man, it was like all of a sudden, you liked the edgier, harder, realer guys. Like my affinity for the comic book characters kind of went away, and then I started to really appreciate Waltman, all the DX and WO stuff. But what influenced me changed. One of my fondest memories was I was at a WWF In Your House. I think it was Saturday in Texas, or it was like a Thursday in Texas. It was like some play on Tuesday in Texas or something like that. Main event was DX versus like Steve Austin and Owen Hart, and like it was like every big star. But it was the day after Shawn Michaels had been like, it was either, I don't think it was when he got beat up by the Marines. I think it's like, I forget his guy, but he left. It was one of the times where he left, and they replaced him with Savio Vega. And I was watching it, And I was like so let down that like Savio Vega replaced Shawn Michaels, but then the match kicked ass, and I really liked it. And I became a Savio fan, and I don't know, just little stuff like that when I think about memories and stuff. I don't know. That kind of stuff sticks out.
Yeah, no, obviously. I mean, Savio, I know it was like the crowd was raucous at that Backlash, but he had like a really warm welcome. I think pretty underrated, and we now like appreciate him when he made that like slight little cameo.
Yeah, he's a nice guy too. Like I've interviewed him a couple times now, and he just seems like a very jovial individual. So I was happy to see him get that pop.
Yeah. Yeah, what I was saying, I think I lost my train of thought. What I was saying earlier is like because I had gotten back into it around 2016, 2017, and my wife then, she was my girlfriend at the time, but she had to start explaining to people what wrestling is because like I was having trouble. They're like, "You like this thing again?" And it's like male soap opera is the best way she puts it, and kind of the best use. So I think that's like a way to communicate it to the layman's of like kind of what this world is.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's this never-ending thing, right? People that die will come back.
Yeah.
There will be, evil twins. All of that stuff. It's there.
Anything you can think of, yeah. So where are you about now locally? You don't have to like you can say neighborhood or area or like you're in the city, right?
Yeah, I live in the nicest part of Chicago. I think I live in the nicest part of the world. I live right up here on the border of Lakeview, Lincoln Park in Chicago. I'm not too far. If you are familiar with the North Pond, it's near the Lincoln Park Zoo.
Yeah.
That's kind of near. I mean, like I'm a 15-minute walk from the zoo, from 15 minutes or less from the zoo, from the lake, from the pond, from Wrigley. Kind of. I'm about 20 minutes from Wrigley. I love it, man. I love the neighborhood.
That's great. So how long have you been a journalist or in journalism?
Am I a journalist? How long have I been in journalism? I used to write. I think I wrote one or two things for my high school paper.
Okay.
But I'm not even positive. I feel like I did. I definitely wrote some theater reviews for Loyola's The Phoenix newspaper. And then I didn't really write. I mean, I always wrote like screenplays and stuff. And then I only got like, if you listen to the Ego Pod, like I only got back into the journal. I only started covering wrestling because I just got tired of getting hit in the head and like not making any money. And I just wanted to stay in the pro wrestling space. I just figured you're around the business. You can do this with the best of them. So, I mean, I guess I've only been really covering it about the past decade actively as a journalist. So about 10 years. Before that, it was like all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah, I think it comes, and there's a whole bunch of other ways you've been involved in wrestling. I think you, the listener, the Potting with Ego, I would recommend that because that gets into a whole ton of that. To me, it comes, you seem, and I don't know what your perception of yourself in journalism is, but I feel like I've seen you pop up a lot just ever since I've got back into it in 2016, 2017.
Too much.
So you see, to me, you're a top of the mind name. That might be like just because local influences and things like that. Because there was this one right when I kind of got into podcasting, before I kind of realized that before we kind of fell into like our niche here in the Chicagoland, which I feel like our niche is very hyper local, and I love that.
Awesome.
And there was I think you might have been. Did you ever work for WrestleZone? Or something with the red logo?
I was the executive editor for WrestleZone for a hot minute there.
I remember. So we were trying to myself and some other people who kind of started what later became Two Heels and a Face. We were making Twitter connections, and there was this. We don't have to go too far down this path, and I'm definitely not trying to throw a name on the bus. But we had made connection with a woman named Trina. I'm not sure if you remember her.
Okay, the name is ringing a bell. I think I know who you're talking about right now.
Was it Last Mark Standing or something that she had a podcast that was similar to that?
Okay.
And I remember she was in Chicago. I don't think she's from here. Great. Had a good connection with her. But she brought me to, it was somewhere in the city around River North. And I just remember walking into this dark ballroom and you were at a table with some people. and you were I don't remember what it was. It was some kind of event or some kind of radio show or radio event. I don't know if anything like that rings a bell, but I remember like seeing you kind of across the room.
Was it a wrestling show or no?
There was it wasn't like a show, but it was some kind of like speaking thing, I think. And I might be getting completely like
it might have been the podcast movement thing down.
Yes. You had like a table and there was people around you and you were talking. So it might have been something like that, like a podcast movement thing in like the River North area. But like that was, or I don't expect you to pull that memory out of the back of your head. I barely remember it. It's like it is very faint, but I do remember that's when I had like a first impression of you. And then I know you went to Wrestle Inc. And so to me, you seem very seasoned in this. I don't know if that's what you would call yourself or not.
Seasoned like fried chicken, baby. Hot and crispy. Fresh out the fryer into the frying pan, my friend.
Okay. I hope I didn't just lose every single listener with that.
No,
random,
this is great. This is good. This is good.
Fart.
I think I saw you in a place at one time.
In a dark room.
Okay. Did we touch? Did we kiss? What happened?
No.
Okay.
I don't remember. Oh man. And there was I have to think of who this personality was. He was like, he had a beard and his gimmick must have been like kind of foreign.
Oh, I know who I want to see him because we're not on good terms anymore. But I know
we're not on good terms. That guy was in the room too. And we were talking to that guy.
Okay. Got it.
Might have been it was probably a podcast. We'll call it a podcast thing.
Yeah, I think I know exactly. I think it was the podcast movement. If I'm remembering everything correctly, what you're describing, I think was that event.
Okay, cool. So now that I completely have racked our brains,
glad we got to the bottom of that. This is some hot shit. Everybody always just talks to me about CM Punk. This is the real stuff right now.
No, I want to know. I want to know why start House of Wrestling. If I didn't mention that before, I think I did. HAUS of wrestling, because to me you seem to be like, okay, I know there's like in my perception there's like Meltzer, there's Sean Ross Sapp, like these are the journalists, and then there's like Hausman. That guy is cool, is a little bit more local, like from what I've seen it like around here and there. But why the move to start House of Wrestling? Can you tell me the thought process behind that? Putting all the chips in for yourself.
Sure. I will say I don't feel local anymore. I felt like the local Chicago guy for a long time. I don't feel that way anymore. I'm doing Observer Live on Sunday. You know, like Meltzer comes and does my show now.
Fair.
And like, you know, the Ace Steel stuff that I reported completely reset the narrative around Punk's comeback. And you got, you know, there's all these moments. I got people with 2.1 million followers antagonizing me for no goddamn reason these days. Like I know that I've outgrown myself as a Chicagoland journalist because
that's true.
I hear from all these other people now, right? I don't want to like blow smoke up my, but I mean like the gravity of that, the stuff that comes along with that, it's dawning on me right now. You know, like kind of day by day. I didn't really think that it would come this far, to be quite frank. So you know, when I left Wrestling Inc., I genuinely thought about leaving the business. I have just been so into everything. I have just been so focused. I was just a little burned out. Sure. But, you know, I took some time. I asked my friends, what should I do? To a T, they all said, you got to do your own brand. Just do your own thing. Okay. You got enough credibility to do it. Just do your own thing and enjoy that ride. And it's the best advice I've ever been given. There have been very, very few hiccups. It has largely been very, very positive. And I'm happy. I'm happier than I've been in a long, long time. And the reason I'm doing it is largely, I mean, for the moment, more about that. You know, I hope the money comes. We're doing all right over here. But I'm just mentally the sharpest and happiest I've been in a long, long time. And that's what it's really been about for me here. So
yeah. I love that. No, that you need that, right? Because I think that helps with the burnout. Like I think I've been not necessarily like in any hobby or anything I've done, you have to want to enjoy it. Because if it starts going too much the other way, then you start resenting it. Right. Yeah. So it's like whatever you do, even if it's anything from your work to just a hobby, you got to make sure there's a part of enjoy. So like, yeah, I'm actually congrats on going, and I'm happy for you. So that's
thank
really
you.
cool.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
The entrepreneurial spirit, have you had that kind of always, or is that like, you said you got some extra push from some of your friends, but have you kind of always had that entrepreneurial spirit or no?
Yeah, I think I have. You
Okay.
know, when I was in high school and middle school a little bit, I was producing my own comedy shows.
Okay.
I was running. I've always been producing my own shows. When I was over in the Chicago comedy community, I was producing my own shows. I've never been very good with business or money. I'm really good at spending it, or snorting it, but I am for the first time working with some people that are much better with business than me. I have spreadsheets. I have a
There you go.
business account, a business credit card. I have budgets. I have expectations. I mean, it's the real deal. And I need that. I need smart people around me telling me how to do it, not necessarily doing it for me, but telling me how to do it, because I can't let them down. And the pressure of that is helping me run a better business than in the past, where it's all just been, hey, let's take the money and buy PBR and drugs. So it's better now.
Yeah, you have that guidance, definitely. And you said a lot of good business buzzwords, so props to that.
Thanks.
A
crew.
Yes. In our I think what's kind of helped with our podcast is we were very different, I think, than a lot of, like, we specifically, wrestling is a buffet. So if people want to come on and talk like WWE, they can. But like, we were like, everyone's kind of talking about that. Let's talk about this show over here, which is like freelance wrestling. Like, we've kind of made ourselves a little bit different than at least like the podcast I would listen to. What is it about House of, like, is it anything we can expect differently from House of Wrestling than kind of all the other sites? Like, what's something that can set you apart?
I think the thing that I've been most impressed with, I won't say surprised, but I'll say most impressed with, is how much more reach the exclusive content gets than the aggregate content. And I know that doesn't sound revolutionary, but when I put up stuff from my interviews that I do, like, this is exclusive comment from Darby Allin or whoever, that does well. Whenever I do backstage news, that does really well. Aggregate, if you can find it anywhere else, it's not going to be as much. It's not going to do as much. Now, I do some aggregate over on House of Wrestling because we want to be involved and show we're covering the news. But if you come to House of Wrestling, you're going to get a lot of content you can't find other places. It will be aggregated eventually and taken other places. But, just this past week, we had Righteous Reg and Phil from Grap City, their best friend Will Washington. He just got taken over to AEW. I got Effie in the feed. I got Dark Side of the Ring co-creator in the feed. Like, all these people I'm talking to, I got this. I'm going to give a little trade secret away here right now.
Uh-oh.
I got this new thing about 2 weeks ago. It's called Otter.ai, OTTER.ai. Do you know what this is?
No, but anything with .ai on it sounds like some kind of nifty tool.
It is. It is a transcription thing. It's $30 a month. And
there you go.
I'm going to shill this right now, and I'm not getting paid by them. It's $30 a month, and you can upload as much audio as you want, and it'll give you transcriptions in a reasonable amount of time, and you can watch the transcription back and listen to the audio and make corrections as you're listening to the audio in the kind of thing. I am turning around content faster than I've ever turned around in my life. It's like you put on the AI gloves and you can make huge robots and machines
like Tony Stark.
Yeah, it's like a Tony Stark power, man. It's like pro wrestling journalism, Iron Man stuff over here. It's wild.
That stuff's really good for SEO too. The transcriptions, put that tucked away on a page, and that's what I do for full time.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is, like, I'm getting all of my interviews. I've got tons of quotes. I've got tons of angles. I didn't do it for House of Wrestling. I have partnerships with other companies. I work with Premier Streaming Network to present our bi-weekly news show, House of Wrestling, very unique name. And I work with Inside the Ropes. I do a once a week big name interview for them. I love their brand. I've wanted to work with them forever. This is just something that worked out really well. Hopefully bigger plans here on the horizon, by the way, between me and Inside the Ropes.
Okay.
Maybe we'll talk again here in a little while. But I did this interview with Medusa today, and dude,
that's a name.
Wild. Like, I can't wait for people to get the highlights of this, because, you know, she worked for Vince at a time we all know now he was a complete deviant, and was a woman working for Vince at that period. And I kind of prodded her to tell me more about, like, what the behavior was of men. And it's really bad. It's like really, really, really gross bad. So I don't know. I talk to people. I get them to say things that are interesting that hopefully you'll have an opinion about or will elicit a response. And that's what makes our site. That's what makes House of Wrestling different. It's just stuff you're not gonna find anywhere else. It's unique to us. We're not just all aggregate. That's not what we do.
No, you sold it for me. That's really cool. How on the list of like difficult things is that those exclusive interviews getting that like very, very difficult, or is just generating so much content or ideas? Like, where do those fall? Like, what are some of the harder parts?
It goes both ways. Like, sometimes you just want to get a big name to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
You know, like this weekend we got Night of Champions and Double or Nothing. I tried to get a WWE talent this week. It did work out, but knock on wood here, I'm told next week I'll be getting talent from both companies, right? And
cool.
like in that situation, you know, you're just looking to take a big name, get them to talk about one or two or three things if you're lucky that everybody's buzzing about that you can kind of connect them to. But then the other way that I do interviews that I am enjoying more is I find something everybody's talking about, and I go try to find people involved in that story to talk about. And they're not always as big of a name, but they're people that I know the story. A great example of this was like a guy named Rick Bassman. And not everybody knows Rick, but Rick is a huge influencer in the pro wrestling community. He was the guy who found Sting and the Ultimate Warrior in a gym, made them famous.
Okay.
No joke.
No, yeah. That helps me put him in my head where he belongs. Yeah.
So I read in a Fightful report that Rick was backstage at Backlash visiting people and doing whatever. I hit up Rick. I was like, Rick, this is a very pivotal time for the company. Can I talk to you? Rick said, for you, anything. Comes on. I'm getting somebody who's backstage at Backlash, 48 hours removed from the show. I broke so many things coming to that interview. He's best friends with Goldberg. He told me about the Goldberg Sting Jerusalem show. He told me about the thing that got the most traffic on my site, House of Wrestling, was this anecdote about how he revealed that the Vince McMahon's office sign they have had backstage forever was replaced by a sign that says Paul Levesque's office. End of an era, right? That thing, gangbusters. Crazy traffic. Go figure. You know?
It's like you're almost focusing on although like that individual you named who I can't remember his
Rick
name.
Bassman. Yeah.
Yes. Not that he's not necessarily not an important person, but he's almost like a bystander to maybe a larger event. In this case, so you take the bystander to someone who might have a little bit more knowledge of just what went on because they're in the room or amongst the crowd, etc.
Yeah, look, if we're all talking about the changing of the guard between Hunter and Paul or Hunter and Vince, give me somebody in the room. Give me somebody that's backstage that's not under contract and can talk. You know, that's the kind of guest that I love. I was talking to Frank the Clown earlier today. Freaking love Frank the Clown. What a draw. Anyway, I talked to Frank, and he was backstage at AEW All Out, hanging with CM Punk the day of the show. That's an interesting angle, right? You know, all of these little things, if you can do your due diligence, meet people. I want people that are in the room. Give me your perspective. I need people part of these stories to help me tell these stories. It's not the same if I love Teddy Long. He's the man. But if I'm talking to Teddy Long about CM Punk, he's just going to be like, yeah, no, Punk. He's always been cool to me. But he's not in the room. Teddy Long plus Punk, it's going to be a good headline, sure. I want people there. Those are the people I've been trying to seek out to talk to more and more.
To Frank's credit, I think he has 100% made his stamp on the independent scene.
Oh, yeah.
And absolutely someone who deserves every opportunity he gets. I mean, that he's he's really good on the mic, and he gets, whether people like it or not, they are interested in either hating him, loving him, etc. So he gets.
He's the man. I like Frank a lot. He gets a lot of hate, and he's good at getting hate. So I guess he's doing his job. But yeah, he's just been a good. I like Frank. I'll take all the heat in the world for that. He has been very nice to me. I call that man a friend. So
getting into what are some of the storylines that you're tracking at the moment? I know you. Can you give us any little, not necessarily the exact story, right? But and a little tease on maybe some stuff upcoming or some stuff you're looking at. I know also too, you talked to someone from Dark Side of the Ring. Well, how was that experience?
I mean, I love the Dark Side guys. Evan Husney, the co-creator, is who I got to talk to. I've talked to Jason too, the other co-creator, and I talked to the composer, Andrew Gordon McPherson. Very nice, very talented individual. It was great, man. I hit pay dirt on that. Like, I was talking to him about how I was confused about what the debut episode was going to be because I couldn't figure it out. And he literally goes into his pocket, pulls out his cell phone, and is like, hey, why don't I just give you the full order of episodes and the air dates they're going to be coming on? I was like, yeah, please. Thank you. So it was a great conversation. It's season 4, which is about to come up on Tuesday. Sounds like it's going to be awesome. But as far as the stories I've been tracking, I mean, it's no secret. I've been following, the whole Punk Elite thing situation. I'm hoping that story is finally coming to a close. I'm hoping cooler heads can prevail in this situation, but I've had my eye on that. It's the biggest story in pro wrestling that's not something happening inside the actual ring right now. So it's been tough not to be so focused on that these days.
Nice. Do you ever get a chance to, I hope you do, I know wrestling is like perpetual and forever. Do you ever get a chance to sit back and enjoy it and not necessarily watch it thinking of can you turn that part of your brain off where you're just like, I'm just going to enjoy wrestling? Or do you think even when you're watching, you're kind of always on thinking about the next thing?
When I do, it's when every year at WrestleMania, I get lost in it.
That's right.
I've covered Mania on site the past several years, and I hope to continue doing that for what it's worth. But every time I go to a Mania, there's something that makes me feel like a little kid. And especially Mania 38, not this most recent, but last year, like when Steve Austin came out of retirement and when Sami Zayn took on Johnny Knoxville. I mean, these were like characters that were formative to me as a child between Jackass and Steve Austin. And I'm sitting here watching these guys put on banger matches right now. I was like a small child leaping out of my seat in the press box.
Nice. That's great. I like that you could. Yeah, I was hoping you could still find that zone, that zen. So it sounds like you still can, which is really cool.
Yeah, man. Right place, right time. I mean, but that's the beauty of pro wrestling is you can get lost in it. It's a distraction. It's supposed to be something really fun. Like all the backstage, politics and nonsense and stuff that ruin pro wrestling. That's the stuff I hate. That's the stuff that I am beyond over these days. The actual art of wrestling is awesome. Wrestling is a fun, cool thing that can be done in ways where you can make anything happen in this crazy world and do it in a fun way. I love pro wrestling. It's the politics, the people, and the unfortunateness and the darkness and stuff that come along with the business. That stuff sucks sometimes.
I know. It's got to be tough, right? Because you're trying to run maybe it's a fine line you have to walk, but you're trying to run a business. And I know getting a piece of that information, not saying you go through any sort of lengths to do that or anything like that, but getting that piece of information is stuff that you will ask about, and you put it on your site and it helps the site, but it's also stuff that too much of it can, like you said, can kind of take the fun out of wrestling. Do you struggle with that at all, where it's kind of that middle ground?
Yeah, the hardest part for me, and the thing that really kind of led to me getting burned out, was having to cover the speaking out movement. You talk to all these women, occasionally men too, that were affected by what happened here. Not necessarily directly, but indirectly for different reasons. And man, I heard awful stuff during that period. And even today when I was talking to Medusa and I'm trying to get her to talk about it, because I think I want more women talking about this. I want to try to clean up the business. I'd like to help the business if I can. She kind of pointedly says, a lot of people that people look at as big celebrities and stars of the business right now are people who have done really bad things that have hurt a lot of people.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to say anything because everybody's scared. And you want to think that the business is evolving, and I definitely think it is. There's big differences between what we're dealing with now, what we're dealing with 30 years ago.
Right.
But part of that still exists. Like there's still there's still a gross underbelly to this business where there are people of influence that are doing terrible things and bullying people around that are trying to stop it. And it sucks, man. So, especially when you the curtain is not just pulled back and burned, but like eviscerated. Like it's not even there. It's just like a window.
Yeah. Well, that ends my questioning. I think I'm excited for all the exclusive and new stuff you guys are coming out. I mean, you mentioned Sting and Goldberg in Jerusalem, and I'm a huge Sting mark, so I don't know, that piqued my interest a little bit as well. So I might have to check that out on the stream. Anything else on your mind? I got you a little bit over 7 minutes, just over. Anything else on your minds that you've been kind of rattling around that you want to talk about or anything like that?
No, I'm good, Charlie. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, man. I am an open book. I really just want everyone. I really just want everybody to be happy and enjoy themselves, and enjoy the business. There's no reason anybody in this wacky, wild, colorful, wonderful world of professional wrestling should be walking around angry or unhappy or scared or anything like that. And if you want to jump on that wave of making things better and be positive, yes, houseofwrestling.com, HAUS of wrestling.com. You go over there every Tuesday and Thursday, noon Eastern, on the premier streaming network that is now co-owned by Freddie Prinze Jr. You can go find me.
Oh,
I know, dude.
Have you met him?
I haven't. And I think it's because I keep saying this. I think it's because I keep saying weird stuff about him. Because I keep saying how I will only meet Freddie if like it's in like a 2-story house and he's in the living room and I'm upstairs, and then somebody plays Kiss Me, and then I walk down the stairs and he has to kind of look at me, like, oh, right, like I'm so pretty. And I keep describing that, and I have no idea why he doesn't want to hang out with me or talk. But we'll see. I'm thinking down the road we're going to get together. But yeah, Freddie Prinze Jr., awesome. Happy to have a team, Premier Streaming Network. Go find us there. And of course, like I said, Inside the Ropes, you can go find me over there occasionally as well. And that's kind of the umbrella of House of Wrestling at the moment. All
right. Well, congrats on everything. Congrats on the success.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, you the listener, the number 2 heelsintheface.com, and 2 Heels in the Face is where you can find all of our socials. But until then, we'll see you next time. And thanks again, Nick. Appreciate it.
No problem.